I'm realizing I don't know how to change this mic height. Oh my gosh. Oh well. Yeah, well. All right, you twist, okay? Twist, and it seems to be working. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Kelly Writer's House. I'm glad you're all here. It's such a nice day. I can't believe it's almost November, and we can be outside in T-shirts. It's so good. Or maybe not.
Scary.
Yeah, it's true. It is a little scary. But anyway, I'm glad to be celebrating with all of you. Patrick Donnelly has a new book out. Carole Bernstein has a new book out. Can we put our hands together just for that? Yeah, we're selling these books after the reading, and we have a reception plan. So I do hope you stick around, and maybe they'll sign them if you haven't already asked them to do that. And we also have older books as well available. We've planned something special because Carole and Patrick know each other's work so well. They are introducing one another, which just really, to me, is sort of the spirit of what a literary relationship can be, and that's just great. So we're gonna start with Patrick introducing Carole. Please welcome Patrick.
Thank you, Jennifer. Can everybody hear me? So, Jessica, Sean, Heidi, all the other wonderful people who make this place work and make it the incredible place that it is. Thank you so much. And there are so many good friends and fine poets in the audience. I'm very grateful that you came out tonight. I'm going to say some factual things about Carole Bernstein, and then I'm going to say some feeling-based things. Carole Bernstein is the author of 3 poetry collections: Buried Alive, A To-Do List, the newest book, Hanging Loose Press 2019, Familiar, also from Hanging Loose Press, which J.D. McClatchy called an exhilarating book, and Stepped Away from the Circle, Sow's Ear Press, winner of the Sow's Ear Chapbook contest. Her poems have been widely published, including in Antioch Review, Bridges, Chelsea, The F Word, Paterson Literary Review, Poetry, Shenandoah, and Yale Review, and in anthologies such as American Poetry: The Next Generation and Unsettling America. She is an original member of Kelly Writer's House Suppose and I's poetry group, and she is a Penn graduate, class of '81. She studied poetry here with Daniel Hoffman and William Zaranka, and, this is interesting, won 2nd place in a university-wide poetry contest judged by Elizabeth Bishop, who corrected her grammar. So, I've known and admired Carole's poetry for about 3 decades now. We met in a workshop led by the late Sandy McClatchy at the 92nd Street Y in New York City. And the folks in that workshop really got along very well. So after it was officially over, we kept it going for about 20 years. And we saw each other through some hard times and some interesting times. And here is what I wrote about Carole's newest book. Carole Bernstein's gorgeous poems are unsentimental, witty, acerbically and hilariously skeptical of nature, of sex, religion, product placement, virtue signaling, and of herself. She takes a stand for the fierce, exasperating messiness of life against abusive ideals of perfection. Preemptively mourning everything she loves, holding off death by any and all means, tending to deep griefs in secret, her compassion masquerades as a silent rebuke to the naive, the uninformed, the as yet unbereaved, about their own embarrassing, dangerous hopes. This wonderful book stokes in me a furnace of purifying rage against all the molesting assholes, against the new Nazis and the old ones, and against onrushing darkness in all its forms. I will follow this ferocious, reluctantly tender voice anywhere. Please help me welcome Carole Bernstein.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I will try to live up to that incredible description. And thank you also, Jessica and Kelly Writer's House. And do I need this thing? Everybody hear me okay? All right. Oh, okay. So, and I also wanted to thank Pat Green and the Suppose and Eyes group, which is part of Kelly Writer's House, and which is an incredible workshop that I've been in for many years and have received incredible support, friendship, critiques, and it's been just an amazing way to keep writing. So, let's see. So I'm going to be reading poems mostly from my new book, Buried Alive, a to-do list. And I'm going to start with a kind of a seasonally poem, although it's actually about a really weird dream I had that I was wandering around in my backyard in the middle of the night. And the poem is called October. October. In the shitty city yard with the keeled-over basil that sprung from a crack in the cement, I wandered at 3 a.m. among the few pots, think-talking to someone omniscient about what might need watering. I soaked the soil of the royally red impatiens, then remembered that the leaves were yellowed to the tips. I strained to see in the dark. My knees started getting frozen. The wind screamed at the screen. How do you feel? What do you desire, my lovelies, my growing things? I had no garden until I had you. The cat screamed at the door. The mandevilla twisted and shook her knotted hair. I broke open a bottle of Miracle Grow and spritzed everyone with a little drinky poo for myself. I grew and grew and grew stupidly large while the plants wisely died, murmuring all around me in the night mist that it was their time. I'm going to read the title poem from the book, and for most of this poem, you need to imagine that somebody is waking up in a coffin and still alive. Buried alive, a to-do list. It will be hot in there with a smell like ancient raisins. Calculate the gravid mass of Amalthea, a moon of Jupiter. Order a pizza using reverse osmosis. Pretend a demon is fucking you. Beg for your mommy and everyone's mommy, even though you're over 50. Assume the position. Know your place. Sleep in. See into the heart of things. Try to see the puckered satin lip-like folds inches above your face. You just know it's pink and livid like a fleshy, diseased vagina, like a badly infected eyelid. Claw at it like in that joke, what would Lincoln be doing if he were alive today? Sing like no one can hear you because they can't. Sing like no one is listening because they're not. Allow a single tear to roll down your cheek, and for once don't think the words, she let a single tear roll down her cheek. Be relieved that you can stop worrying about being buried alive someday. Try to guess what they dressed you in. Feel the edges, the Michael Kors, and heels without pantyhose, as if you were 25. You hope they gave you earrings. Masturbate? A quick one or really drawn out? It would be awful when you'd finished and nothing had changed. Pick your nose. Oh, you can't reach up. Scratch your ear. Oh, same. Your elbow keeps slamming into the side. Somebody failed to cremate you. Somebody didn't get it, that only you would accidentally be buried before you were thoroughly dead, and everyone else goes into the ground just fine, just not you, because you are so special that no medical professional could truly know when your superhuman mind had stopped functioning. What did you die of? Why can't you remember? Don't panic, stupid. Preserve your body for the last judgment when Christ, the action figure, will harrow or winnow or do something or other with hell and assume all the righteous folks. Does he take Jews? You could pray in Jewish, but you only know the one for Hanukkah. Bet you wish you'd taken Hebrew now. No, you can't play Scrabble on your phone. You don't even have a pad and pen. Just as well, hangman would be macabre. Scratch your initials in your own arm so you can think about how much that hurts. You will have to do this by feel. Close your eyes and imagine a blowing meadow like they showed on the hospital TV when you had your thyroid out. There was calming music. Open your eyes and there is no meadow forever. It's just really dark. The joke is on you. Wait for the worms. Unless that's just bullshit and the worms are much more interested in grossing you out while you're gardening or lying around on the cement walks in heavy rain around the housing project of your childhood. Some were stepped on, half squished on the head or tail. You couldn't tell which. Better to be all squished, you thought. Think about something else. The elderly man who one freezing day after a snowstorm asked if you would buy him the Jewish Daily Forward. You were 12 or so, about to go to the store for your mother's Sunday Times. He had on a coat and hat and scarf, shades of gray and black, but was still standing in the lobby. There were dirty smears of icy water, a shiver of cold whenever the revolving door came around. He pressed some money in your hand and closed your fingers over it, like a scene from a movie. There were people in your neighborhood from the Holocaust, people with horrifying numbers burned into their arms. You aren't sure if he was one of them. You never looked at their faces. When you came back, he thanked you over and over and said what a good girl you were. He was so grateful, and you were so embarrassed, because being 12, you were always embarrassed. The snow was piled right up to the big plate glass windows of the lobby, higher than you'd ever seen, snow laced with ice, which was dangerous for him, although you didn't realize it or understand about old people. When you close your eyes, you will see these windows and the snow, zipping your jacket to step out there. Already you can see your breath. This next poem deals with a childhood memory. When I was growing up, a lot of parents routinely had their kids' tonsils out when they were babies. And my parents didn't, and then I kept getting tonsillitis every winter, and eventually I had them out when I was 12 years old, and I was absolutely terrified of having this done. Tonsillectomy, age 12. Everyone else had them out when they were little. I was sure this would be the end. The week before, I had a dream. "Ma, when am I going to die?" "Saturday," she says casually, over her shoulder because she's scrambling eggs, and I scream histrionically and collapse. I had to undress in the hospital and wear a gown that was ragged and smelled like vinegar. I cried when my mother gave me the nail polish set. I wanted to be a baby, clutching a stuffed bunny. My father was crazy. They were divorced. A photo of Alan Alda, star of MASH, was hidden in a baggie in my suitcase. I woke up with nostrils crusted black from the ether or blood, squinting drunkenly at the Dutch boy and girl on the wall. Home days later, relatives visiting, my throat spasmed around chocolate ice cream. They were talking about a botched tonsillectomy? No older than her, Aunt Pearl clucked, jabbing a finger. I met her stare. What happened exactly? My mother turned to me. Come help in the kitchen. In a couple of years, it would be her, not me, who never came up from the anesthesia. Cushing syndrome, obesity, the strain it puts on the heart. I was told these things. Other people have had parents for years and years who are just now faltering. I listen and nod appropriately. Good luck with all that. I know death, I'm thinking. He'll show up when he feels like it, hoping they don't realize I've never grown up. I'm going to read a couple of poems that deal with childhood abuse, and I hope that's going to be okay with the people here. I'd like to preface it with this great quote I recently found from the writer Anne Lamott. She said, "You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people want you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." Just love it. Okay. This one is called My Guardians. After my uncle showered, steam poured out of the door like the breath of hell. To enhance his allure, some powder, a smelly spray, the blow dryer blasting hot air, more force than was necessary to tame the few strands of hair distributed over his scalp. At 11, he'd leave for the restaurant, and I'd go to high school. On the subway, nodding, my aunt went racketing into Manhattan. My aunt was hard of hearing and chose what she wanted to see. In those couple of hours, not fearing, he could do what he wanted with me. My guardians. They gave me Ariel the poodle, clothes, a sweet 16. They gave my mother a decent burial. Late morning sun in the foyer laid down its oily sheen. I had my turn in the shower, but I could never get clean. Home improvement. Sometimes in the living room or in Uncle and Aunt's bedroom, and one time in the kitchen on the squeaky white swivel chair. Once it was even in the basement of Uncle's restaurant. The ceiling hung low over my head, but seemed to stretch for miles in every direction. Gloom, dead quiet. Why didn't Uncle move quickly when that employee came down? My slow motion horror. There was a short story in English class. A husband kissed someone else in his wife's bed. Mr. Widelsky pulled on his beard, widened his eyes very earnestly, and asked, "What kind of man is this?" Ha, kissing. He looked at me and terror shot through me. Wait, did he know? He knew I'd gone to live there. Uncle's 2 sons came to visit with their wives. They sat in the living room. Lori was trying a new hairstyle. She let Uncle hold the baby. I wondered, would he feel up its vagina through the diaper? Then we all went upstairs to look at the new shower doors with the full-length mirror on the outside. So easy to clean, said Lori. No more mildewed curtains, Aunt rejoiced. Guess who doesn't like it, Uncle said, jerking a thumb. Everyone looked at me. Since I had nothing to say, he answered, She don't like to see herself sitting on the can. Then he laughed, and then they laughed. The third poem in this, along this theme, actually deals with politics as well. Many of us since the 2016 election have had a lot of sort of, personal feelings about what's been going on, and the personal sometimes becomes political, or the political becomes personal, I should say. This poem is called 45, and it has an epigraph from William Carlos Williams: "No one to witness and adjust, no one to drive the car." 45. The fat blowhole of a mouth, the dangling tie of blood, splashed across every news feed, every video from waking until night. The dirty blonde scraps of hair as if pulled from a drain, or if he'd killed another old man for it and had it sewn to his head. His skull dumbly echoes with the mob's howls of adoration. Someone's idea of a joke was driven into the unthinkable, and people ended up dead or terrorized or damaged beyond repair, staring into exhaustion. I fuck porn stars, the mouth says. I fuck everybody. I will fuck you over. He is my uncle, essentially, but with a ton more money and not Jewish. I am 15 again, a supplicant in my uncle's house by his good grace. I'm in charge, baby, better do what I tell you. And yes, I did it. I did it. He's in his grave now, at least. They are monsters, I think, like the ones that lope across celluloid, pour gasoline on nightmares. But there are no monsters. There is only flesh wobbling around bone, wrinkled testes slopping down thighs, a hoarse voice spit thickened with age, still bragging about grabbing the young stuff. Can this ever be wiped away? So this next poem deals with racial prejudice, or I should say suspected racial prejudice, and about an actually really nice interaction that I ended up having with an older gentleman in my neighborhood. It's called George. Old man glasses, shot with freezing sunlight, plastic bagged groceries sagging on a car hood near the ancient deli, splayed cane like a claw. Can I help you? Where are you headed, George? Can I help you? I'm getting a ride, he says. Old as World War II. The nicknames on plaques with something or other airborne in the little park on the corner. Oogie, Moon, Biff, Red. Sometimes after winter, one doesn't return to his favorite bench. They fought the Japanese. They hail my white daughter, but the Asian one, the little one, is invisible in their eyes. Or is it her manner, strutting by with her baseball bag? It's whatever, it's the neighborhood. They're old. George's friend drives up in a big old loose body of a car. George bustles to get ready, forgets the bags. I hurry after. He looks me straight in the eye, last wisps of hair fluttering on his skull. I always see you, he says, and ask, how is your daughter? But you have two. You have two daughters. His windburned, freckled face grins, and I grin uncontrollably. He takes both my hands in his hands and shakes them. A bird tumbles up through a bare tree's branches. Yes, thank you, I say. They are fine. They are both fine. I thought these little flags were so clever, and now I'm having trouble finding things with them. All right, I got it. So I don't usually write haiku, but I've written a few that I like, and I made a little group of them in my book. And it's a nice break from the heavy stuff that I usually write about. So a break for all of us. So the first one is called Yellow Leaf, and it mentions a croton plant, which is just this big, ugly house plant. Yellow Leaf. My sister chased me with a gnarled croton leaf. I laughed, but ran from death. The second one is called Trout. Belly of a trout, glimmering above rooftops, twilight April sky. And the last one is called Relief. Unemployment comp slips thinly through my mail slot, sad and happy day. So I'd like to read one poem from my older book called Familiar. When I was growing up in New York, my mother used to play mahjong with her friends, and they'd take turns playing at each other's houses. This poem is a sestina, and it has some terms from the game of mahjong, like crack, dot, bam, flowers, seasons, winds. Those are all terms from mahjong. Mahjong, 1967. Every fifth Saturday night, it was my mother who sliced a pineapple, laid out grapes, a circle of Danish or cheesecake. She let me take the set down from the closet. Fake alligator case, smoke green, bamboo green handle. This would be the night the ladies came over. The four winds, Ruth, Bee, Hannah, and Thelma would be winds, east, south, north, west, greeted my mother, who sat out this round, betting who would be the first to call it. There within the circle, four ladies sit, crack jokes, throw dice, and smoke, each trying to draw the pair plus four sets. I lay in the dark singing softly, heart set on staying awake. She's singing, says someone, winding the timer. One crack, three dot, two bam, smoke curls from their nostrils. Tomorrow my mother will let me have cake for breakfast. She scans the circle, jots down her bet. The betting wheel, a doll frisbee, was lost in the kitchen junk drawer because B, my mother told me, was cheating. I had upset the drawer once, discovered the carved jade circle. Now they are calling flowers, seasons, winds. Coffee is poured, tiles clack. My mother's voice, was it like the others? Rough with smoke, sarcastic, sweet? Like something seen through smoke, her voice, her face now. Barbara, who would be, soon and endlessly to me, the dead mother. The woman lost except in fragments set, in exquisite arrangements that no wind disturbs, appraised by a small circle. I place her now among that evening circle of Brooklyn Jewish ladies exhaling smoke, playing a Chinese game blown in on the winds of change earlier in the century. She would be at home with these women, enjoy setting coffee and cake before them. My mother, who can you be, keeping company with the four winds, who set a last thin dragon of white smoke on the air and stepped away from the circle. I'd like to finish my reading with a poem called Pastoral. This poem draws on two sources. One is the pastoral tradition in English poetry, and the other is a memory of cutting school with my friend to smoke weed. So I hope it's an interesting combination. Pastoral. Sunny with the intensity of dream. Huge balloony graffiti covered the stone wall at the end of Avenue M, where Iris Bloom took me to smoke a joint and we cut orchestra, second period. Avenue M, was that it? Some concrete promontory secret above the subway where it burst up into the light, We watched it racket a while among the green backyards like a real train from a real place, not Brooklyn, and sink again. The passengers, blinking, would be headed for work, starting their day. What possessed me that morning? I never cut school. But we would not play that day, our oboes lying in cases by our feet and books, the reeds not in our mouths, the joint passed, sipped at with the breath, tentative, a new thing to do. I took off my jacket, the breeze moved over my arms. We felt lean as boys. We were dangerous, unsexual, unobserved. And then returned to the low building and entered it, blinded for a few seconds, believing ourselves altered, the blackboard fathomless, the passing bell shrieking. Dull-lipped seemed the faces of the uninitiated. By 3, the sun had faded, but our smoke, its animal warmth, I thought it scented the spring wind. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. And I actually remembered to stay up here and introduce Patrick, so I'm going to do that. As Patrick mentioned, we first met in a poetry class with Sandy McClatchy at the 92nd Street Y in New York, longer ago than I care to admit, and I'm so glad that we stayed in touch all these years. His new book is called Little Known Operas. This is my copy of it, and I hope you'll get a copy for yourself tonight. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about his accomplishments. He is the author of 4 books of poetry. So in addition to Little Known Operas, he has published Jesus Said, Nocturnes of the Brothel of Ruin, and The Charge. He's the former poet laureate of Northampton, Massachusetts, which I did not know, and that's extremely cool. He's the director of the poetry seminar at the Frost Place and an associate editor of Poetry International. His poems have appeared in American Poetry Review, Slate, Plowshares, the Yale Review, the Virginia Quarterly Review, Hayden's Ferry Review, the Massachusetts Review, and many other journals. Patrick's translations with Stephen D. Miller of classical Japanese poetry were awarded the 2015-2016 Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission Prize for the translation of Japanese literature. His other awards include a U.S.-Japan Creative Artists Program Award, an Artists Fellowship from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Margaret Bridgman Fellowship in Poetry from Breadloaf, and an Amy Clampett Residency Award. Ilya Kaminsky has commented on his work, on this book. Here is a gospel according to Patrick Donnelly, a book of revelations of what it means to be human, to be hurt, to be awed, to be stunned by our world, and to find love late in life. There's more, but I also want to tell you about the things that I love about his work. I love the incredibly engaging blend of Eastern and Western religious traditions in his work, and it's woven in a masterful way by a profoundly educated voice that slips effortlessly among different beliefs and different arts. We have references to everything from Desdemona's Willow Song from Othello to Japanese imperial poetry to a Maria Callas aria to academic treatises on ancient burial practices to Thomas Mann's The Seven-Story Mountain. I love this in this book the sense of a personal connection to religious figures like Jesus and Buddha, but with Jesus being in some ways as vulnerable as the rest of us and having unanswered questions himself. And I love the use of Bible quotations in a way that's really fresh and beautiful and seems to give them new meaning. In these luminous poems, every line hangs in the air like music, attendant on the next. But as ethereal as they are, they also incorporate a sense of the human striving to understand, to make sense of the world. This is spiritual searching that is always fleshly as well. They never sail off into the ether and leave the reader behind. We can always feel these poems. It's my great pleasure to welcome Patrick Donnelly.
Thank you, Carole, for that introduction, and your poems are amazing. I totally love this new book. I have really happily read at Kelly Writer's House for each of my books, and so now my newest book feels official. It is indeed called Little Known Operas, and the cover image is a red velvet cloak that Franco Zeffirelli designed for the great opera singer Maria Callas to wear in the 1964 production of Bellini's Norma at the Paris Opera. And the reason for this will become clear in just a second. Inside, this book is built with two intertwining sequences. As Carole hinted, the first sequence is in the voice of my own very weird version of Jesus. Something about writing through this persona freed me up to say some stuff that I didn't know I wanted to say. And according to me, Jesus is a gardener, a Sufi Muslim, an esoteric Buddhist, a sufferer of ocular migraines, an atheist, and a fan of Federico Garcia Lorca. A reading MC recently accused me of attempting a wholesale restructuring of Christianity, which isn't exactly wrong. The other sequence is, in fact, about Maria Callas, 1923 to 1977, who has fascinated me for over 50 years. For my 10th birthday in 1966, I asked my parents for a specific recording of Verdi's opera Rigoletto with Callas, conducted by Tullio Serafin, baritone Tito Gobbi, tenor Giuseppe Di Stefano. I can only speculate that I must have learned about this recording from studying the liner notes of my mother's other La Scala recordings. There was no internet in those days. This request frightened my father very much, that I might be gay or something. And he was right about that, and you'll be glad to know that he and I reconciled around that reality, and he came to my wedding in 2005. The funny thing is that they gave me the recording. You're going to hear in these Callas poems that I deliberately confuse her with my own dramatically troubled mother, who first took me to the opera when I was 6 years old, La Traviata, Santa Fe Opera. How do we get from Jesus to Callas? Well, Jesus himself mentions her, as one does, and then the Callas sequence branches off from the Jesus sequence. Jesus said to me, "Did you mean to draw some moral from your own life? How you found love so late? How though you weren't patient, weren't kind, in pursuit were ruthless, it was given to you anyway? Though that story's not done, not proven, you have some wisdom to share with the loveless now, do you? Something they should or shouldn't do. The gay boy, the raped girl, the libeled widow." Jesus now resting his abraded hand on the book. "Go ahead then. Speak. Promise them something." Jesus said, "A program remembers, doesn't it, where you stopped watching the movie, where you clicked off those books before shutting off the light. Other programs remember your searches, your queue, passwords, complaints, the wallpaper you chose, how loud, how bright you preferred things to be, your presence in the streaming firmament. What I want to know is, after you've climbed up the 7-story bardos, louder and brighter than you prefer, I've heard, How long do you think they'll remember your place? Hold it open for you. Keep it warm. Standing and moving. My God, through the night's susceptible hours, I search with my tongue for some formula for remembering you, one that doesn't insist on your oneness, which I doubt. There is no God, but God tastes funny to me, bad funny, because though, okay, as Rookheiser said about islands, oh, for God's sake, they are connected underneath. Above the surface, you are many gods, a hard rain of gods, in fact. You are the dry river, the black brook, lost lake, small hidden falls, and the sweet water of Maryland's Pretty Boy Reservoir. You are the subfusk hour of the rat, and Myoken, the pole star. You are a current forcing yourself north, wind resisting your progress, tides rushing up and down the channel, confused and dangerous. You are table mountains, arches and domes, standing stones in an oval, Long Meg and her daughters. And how can you not be the terrible ancient cedars at Okonuin, the mossy graves and hollow underplaces of Dis, Tartarus, and Yomi, realms of white moths and trippy organ pipes, as well as foxes, words, ghosts, honey, oils, and noises. In the past, you've hid in the mystery of swords, mirrors, and comma-shaped jewels. More recently, the god Hermes showed himself to my friend Diane as Freddie Mercury at about age 39. And I know a guy who leaves a 5-yen coin on the windowsill as an offering to whatever the view is that day. To me, you've appeared as certain verbs, such as beheld in English or blanchir in French, in the music, the drumming, if not the argument of La ilaha illallah, and in some gestures, such as the half-moon night in 1987, when a pale god named Bruno leaned over to kiss, oh, thirsty me, young and transfigured on the dance floor of the Parliament House in Orlando, the memory of which is bodies of water, both standing and moving. Written on the mirror in steam, Jesus' note read, "Try to remember who I was before you heard my name." Jesus said, "You will not be able to catch the swan boat of your youth by running after it like that." I know it was pretty. I know it didn't linger. I know the pier caught fire and sank. "Wait," he said, "tarry a while alongside the wreck." I don't say this to everyone, but there will come another swan. Jesus said, "Buddhas of limitless light," a phrase encountered by accident, let's say, on an old scroll or overheard. Afterward, would it be impossible to feel so doubting and blue about people, never again so stagey, so show-me, so heart-hurt, even if there are no Buddhas of limitless light? Jesus said, "God without concepts." I said, "But what about metaphor, simile, analogy, coyotes yipping at the moon in the water?" Jesus said, "God without concepts." I said, "Doctors without borders, dismissal without prejudice, bath time without tears." Jesus said, "The Rothko Chapel," said, "Song without words." I said, oh, please, you just broke your own rule. And I said, instead of Rothko's empty black and purple voids, how about 14 Heiligen in Bavaria? Those creamy ovals, S-curves, rococo, stucco, volutes, shells, floating bows, witty, teasing, elusive architecture, even Robert Venturi liked. Look it up. Jesus said, God without. But it was late, and I had already hung anyway up on him. I dreamed that Jesus bid me go and rake the ashes on Mount Golgotha, looking for the poems he lost there. My dear, don't weep, he said. One of them began, a bead like amber hung from pine. So you may, he said, find my virtue glinting in the dust. The rosin of my heart, he said. My dear, he said, my litter of lost rosin. Jesus said, just when I think I've heard everything Callas recorded, I stumble on something new. This Sanson thing I almost didn't click on because it was, Sanson, who stormed out of the Rite of Spring, 29 May 1913, infuriated over the misuse of the bassoon. Anyhow, 61, Paris, Callas with her musical friend Georges Pret. Too bad they couldn't have married as well. They were good together. It was 3 years after her voice was supposedly gone. She gave to one listener an experience he described on YouTube. Working with my dad in the chip shop, radio on in the background, this was played. I couldn't recognize the singer, but remember saying, Dad, she has to be one of the greatest in the world. Her voice confused me. But how often do we get a chance to listen as if for the first time? His first time, so close to her last time. You, writing this, Jesus said, tried to be a singer when you were young. You weren't good enough. But Callas opened a neural pathway through which the representations run, masks of light and shade. Maybe her voice had almost to be gone before it could prove with inevitable little slidings from one note to its neighbor or wider, Delilah to Samson, that her confidence was shot, but not her throat, still changing every note's color. All that has dark sounds, roots thrusting into the fertile loam, known to all of us, ignored by all of us, a power and not a behavior, a struggle and not a concept, not even in the throat, but surging up from the soles of the feet, her feet before which lay paradise. Maria Callas went to Hamburg. In 1959, when Maria Callas went to Hamburg, her hair was still neoclassical. In the film, she emerges at 0 minutes, 7 seconds, silk legs the clapper of an underwater bell. But the moment I need to tell about is at 42:30, Prelude of the Pirata Aria, when, resting her left hand on the conductor's cage, head down, eyes closed, cloistered, 30 seconds, 40, 50. She doesn't know us. We are nowhere and no one. Descending figure, strings distressed, dissonant, trembling, swelling. Remember Mom in the 60s? Her door closed sometimes till noon. One of the things that really interested me in writing about Callas was she was a person who made big public mistakes, both on stage and in her personal life. And it caused me to think, when you're the object of such public scrutiny, how do you go on after making a big public mistake, assuming you don't just rush off the stage and are never heard of again, which is not what she did. And for that matter, how does anyone go on after making a big mistake? Crack up at 1436. The trouble starts at woe to him, Lady Macbeth, letter scene, who sets uncertain foot and then retreats. On retreats, her mouth starts square, G, A, B, high C, then spreads. The C thins, curdles, acidic. But to me, it's less important that she cracks the high C. Yes, she does. She did. 1959, moment 1436. Then what her face did, her hands. Eyes widen, narrow, widen wider while she tries to save the note. After it splinters, all gone, went wrong so fast, her right hand apologizes, out from the breast, back, saying, well, I tried. I practiced for 22 years, for instance. So for a moment, 10 measures, horn, trumpet, trombone, strings, how about we shut our eyes and smile to ourselves? Then, side eye to the conductor, not your fault, moving on. Come on, hurry, I want to burn that cold heart of yours. Long muteness at 4612. Then, after hiding, Callas opened her eyes and raised in profile her pointy chin, one of her mad scenes, but where's her voice? I'm just a baby in a mud house in a mountain town, so I can't help much. Maybe Mom will take me to the opera, pull on her black Dior with the plunging back, ask me to sponge Max Factor over her scars, those little white moons. At 4406, her face had one hope. At 4416, it flowed out through her eyes. But where's her voice? Her perfume was my sin. Her 50s console full of opera from Dick Aspinwall, sometime afternoon guy who asked, did I want a knuckle sandwich? I know now that when I'm 9, I'll sing soprano, Act 1 altar boy in Tosca, Trouble in Butterfly, Marie's kid at the end of Wozzeck on his stick horse, hop, 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 and I'll shake Stravinsky's hand. I can't help this either, but Dad might have worried less about queers in the theater and more about the afternoons he was away. At 4612, I'm still 3, so I won't hear it for another 55 years when finally, is it day or night? Am I alive or buried? She opens her mouth. Callas versus Jesus. You knew it would come to this, right? Yeah. Jesus includes Callas, but Callas has no Jesus in her. It being very Greek of her to ignore him in favor of his mother and to count upon her understanding of why a woman would feel the need to say over the radio, I would not kill my enemies, but I will make them get down on their knees. I will, I can, I must. Goodbye, little table, at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. While we two were together, we only ever needed one glass to drink from, she sang. Rumors that Callas had a baby named Omero Lengrini. The earth, the dirt, it doesn't refuse any step we might make today. not more than yesterday. The space between atoms isn't more remote, lonely, angry. Because some of these mornings when my foot first touches the ground, I have to cry, Mother, Mother. Callas as Medea. Never type in the comments section that she had the voice of an angel. Please, fool, what angel ever cried wronged, wronged, wronged from all 6 tits while warming her feet at a fire made with the other soprano's pretty hair? One feather of the firebird, it said, could light a darkened room. If you must type something, type a voice of white phosphorus, of ichor, of the Centralia mine fire still burning after 54 years, of a cloak made with flayed angel skins with their caroling tongues still attached. Because what you see when with her nightshade, Callas x-rays the dark room where you thought you were alone, is the feathered gods at work, bringing death to the living and raising the dead to life. Envoy. Callas and my mother say goodbye. 1. After whoever filched her urn from its niche in the columbarium, then sleepy, bored, set it down, I'm making up this part now, on Christmas Day on the path of the dragon, it was Vaso decided on the Aegean. The sea being the one place where, when you put something, you always know where it is. A windy day, her ashes blew back in their faces, their mouths. 2. Following me, watching, listening, writing this, you can't save me. Out the window I'll sleepwalk again over the rickety mill race. I'll wake up, it's in my music, again on the divan of some man not your father. And again I'll cross the Alps on just my exhaled breath. Bruna's hand. You went to her niche in 87, stole a white rose Bruna, her maid, had left. Bruna's hand left a rose, and your hand carried it away. The primal uses of Callas. After about 1 million births, the soul recognizes the scent of placenta carried from a darkened room in a bowl, destined for a variety of ancient uses. I told Jesus when I was afraid as a child, I looked for pictures of you in the encyclopedia and circled them around my bed. Jesus said, I remember. Giotto cimabue fra angelico. I remember the bells as Duccios Maestà was carried into the cathedral. I told Jesus I asked you to lift my gayness from me, laid down on my face in front of the altar at All Saints Church on West 4th Street in Detroit. I was 19. It was 1975, midnight, and the tiles were cold. Jesus said, I remember asking you, hath the rain a father, or who hath begotten the drops of dew? I told Jesus, for 30 years I asked you to send me someone to love, and then Stephen came and we married, but we were old, so I begged you, keep us alive, let us live a little longer. Jesus said, I remember the poem of you that I sent to the Empress with a branch of flowering. Thank you so much. Thank you. Carole and I are very happy to sign books and would love to talk with you afterwards. Thank you again for coming.